Good morning guys, I'm Chris and welcome back to this Sunday's episode of Rift Amps. Just my regular reminder to all those budding amp builders out there, all your hardware in your amplifier needs to be locking, whether that's a Keps nut or a nylock nut or you use a lock washer, right? Because vibration is an absolute killer in an amplifier. Now, sometimes it's not possible to use locking hardware, whether it's not available or the situation just doesn't allow. So I always use a tiny bit of Loctite. So I'm just putting the standoffs into this Ainsley Lister signature amplifier. So I use these little standoffs for the board, you see, and you've got a long screw, machine screw, that goes all the way through it. So they call these female spacers. Like that, sorry. And then, so that's going through the chassis and then through the board. And then you've got a nylock nut on top. That's how I do them. But this part, I always put a tiny bit of thread locker, and then that's definitely not going to move, and therefore it's definitely not going to rattle. Because if it rattles, it's going to be an absolute nightmare to fix. So that's what you do. I'll show you how much we put on. I have shown this before on the channel, but I know you guys like to see the detail. It's nothing more than that much. Hardly anything, right? That's all it needs. And when that sets dry, that's not moving. Torque on these is probably, well, smidge more than hand tight is all it needs to be. Hardly anything. God, my hands are cold today. And with that then snugged down, come on, get on there. I've got a little bit on the underside here, which means that's not, when that sets, that's not going to move. And I've also got some on the thread as well. Nice and tight. Job done. There it is. See, now that's not going to move now. And I do that for any piece of hardware that doesn't have a Keps nut or doesn't have a nylock nut or a lock washer. The Ampeg Micro VR is back together. It's got the new gain and volume pots now installed. Unfortunately, the knobs, which had the broken shafts in, I could not get those shafts out. I tried drilling them out, but no good. So I've ordered some more pots, but I've moved them around, so at least I've got some control at the moment. Running on the bench, driving 8 ohms. Here's our output sine wave. We're currently getting 25 volts into 8 ohms. That puts us at 78 watts. If I advance the treble control, we do get quite a boost up, so we'll call it there, 31, puts us 120. Now it says it should do 150 into 8 ohms, which will be just under 35 volts. But to get that, we get quite a strange output signal, sine wave. So we'll see how that goes. I'm going to leave it running for a bit. The fans come on after about 5 minutes of running. It's pulling 189 watts out the wall. Certainly pulling some power. But yeah, that's all back together. Wait for the new knobs to arrive, then I can put it all back into the cabinet and call it done. Quick update for you on the Silver Plate Early Drip Edge Pro Reverb. 240 volt conversion now done, so it's now got the correct UK plug on it. all wired incorrectly. Do you remember the customer wanted to run the 5U4 rectifier, but the previous tech had wired in using the higher voltage secondary rather than the lower voltage. So I've now done that. I've checked bias. Amp sounds great. The amp suffered, as a lot of these amps can do, is a slight distortion on the tail of notes on the second channel. As you remember, it had the original cathode bypass capsule, which I've now replaced, and that noise is now done. The amp's finished its soak test, it's burn-in, it's all good. Just going to stick it back in the cabinet and call that one complete. Now, his other amp, the one we had on the channel a couple of weeks ago, the Deluxe Reverb, that's the one where we did a 240 volt conversion and we swapped the... what have I put that back on? We fitted a replacement power transformer to do that conversion. Well, it came back in because there was a noise through the reverb circuit. You could hear the springs, the springs were moving through, but even though there's no input signal, so you're getting these really weird pings and things going on. Unfortunately, it was a faulty reverb transformer, so I fitted a replacement for him to get that one up and running, and that one sounds good. So that's two, that's the Deluxe, that's the cabinet for the Pro, so that's those two now done. Just need to get the chassis back in there, and he's on his way to collect them later on today. Had this Ampeg B15N dropped in for quite a large service and check over. Same spec, I believe, as the one we had in recently, although I can't quite remember. Remember the ATB one. This is another one. This guy picked this up for just 600 quid. Absolute deal, right? But he doesn't know if it's been serviced. He says it sounds great, but it does need some work doing to it. He wants to make it safe, make it good. You know the score. Speaking of Ampegs, I'm still waiting on the capacitor kit to arrive. They're stuck in customs in the UK at the moment, so when they finally get here, I can make progress on that. But this is what happens all the time. You're often just stuck around waiting for parts. The Cornford Roadhouse 50. Actually, yeah, I want to show you. This is the one that's running the KT77s. Well, do you remember how I said in the inspection clip that it was odd that this amp had a choke? And I didn't remember them ever having chokes. And of course, it's a Mercury choke. It's not a Demeter Windings amp transformer choke. So that was interesting. Now, I found something inside. On further inspection, here's the two wires from the choke, just the two black wires. And one has been soldered in down there, you can see, and the other wire is soldered into the back side of this resistor. Do you remember I pointed this resistor out and said it looked a bit odd? Well, this is a choke that's been added by somebody else, because where is it? Down here, you can see the trace has been cut on the board. Let me get you, sorry, it's all shaky. I'm trying to get this right for you. Down here, somebody's cut the trace. Let me get a better shot. That's better, we can actually see it now. Right in here, you can see someone's deliberately broken the trace and installed the choke in its place. Why they've done that, maybe they didn't like the response of the amp or whatever reason it is, but now we've got an amp that is no longer factory spec. Does sound good, but it confirms why the customer thought this amp doesn't sound like any of the other Roadhouse 50s that he's tried. So this one has been modified to run KT77s. Someone's installed a choke. Now, I've been unable to fault this amplifier. It still puts out the voltage it should. Everything works fine. So all I've got to do, the last job on this, is just swap out, do you remember the two parallel resistors, the screen resistors there. Just going to swap those out, put a correct 1K in there, 5 watt, and then this amp can go back in the cabinet and is done. Hot Rod Deluxe, it's been a while. I haven't seen one of these in for a couple of months, so you know, it was always going to happen eventually, wasn't it? What's it in for? Customer complaint is that this thing makes a buzz. So I've got it plugged in at the back. Let's turn it on. and see what it does. Give it a couple of seconds to warm up, and hopefully the problem will be immediately present, and then we haven't got to spend ages trying to get it to play up. Just standard operational noise. Should we give it the old whack? Okay. Not buzzing at the moment. Let's spin it round, get the back off, have a peek inside in case there's anything immediately obvious. Standard affair really. I'm just having a look, and obviously it's got the IEC caps, which the customer has requested that maybe we replace those whilst we're in there. Quite happy to do that for him, no problem at all. Wire it for 240 volt, you know, standard they come at 230, so we'll do that at the same time, cool this thing down. But he's complained about buzz. Oh! Okay, customer complaint confirmed. Whilst we're in here, let's look at these resistors here. They're common cause for problems. It looks like there's a tiny bit of heat damage, but not a lot. So if I'm putting the board down to do these caps, we'll replace these, elevate them, and check the state of the PCB traces behind. But this problem here, is it a cold solder joint? Or is it something else? The other thing I've seen is this solder joint, this solder pin here looks like it's got a cracked joint. Although if I wobble the valve, it doesn't move. Careful, that's hot. So we're going to need to check all of these solder joints as well whilst it's in standard service stuff for one of these. So, okay. Is this the valve? Is it the socket? Is it solder joints? Interesting. We'll find out. Weather update. Sun's out finally. It's cold, slightly damp on the ground, but it is nice and sunny. Right, so the easiest thing we can do in our diagnosis is let's swap out the wear and tear item, which is the valve itself. So we'll confirm this one's faulty. Play up. Come on. And we'll fit a new one. And straight in. Oh, I've got the orientation wrong there. There we go. There's a brand new TAD ECC 83, and let's see if we can get this thing to play up. This is going to annoy someone. There's still a bit of noise there, but it's not making that awful buzz. Let me just reinsert it again. Make sure we didn't do something wrong. That's now in. So it's not as bad as it was, but there is still a noise. Let's try another valve, in case that one's got its own problem. Wouldn't be uncommon to, wouldn't be unheard of. Okay, valve number 3. We'll let it warm up. Okay. So there's still a noise there, but it's not doing that buzzy thing. Let's put the original valve back in. I think there's something going on with this socket, you know. There you go, that's now in. Sorry. Can you explain that? I can't explain that. What is going on? Let's put some stress on the board. No, not that. No, it's not playing up at all. Take it out, check the pins aren't bent, back in. Now, what have I done? Well, all I've done is pulled valves out and put them back in. I haven't done any proper fixes. I've just tested things, but now it won't play up. Let me leave it running for half an hour and come back to it. Right, it's had half an hour of making absolutely no noises, and literally as I pressed record, it started making noises again. Let's tip this amp on its side and get a good view of that socket from underneath. How does that look to you? The pins look okay. I can't see an issue there. I can't see one that's obviously bent or damaged or squished or out of place. So I'm not sure. Can we zoom in even further? Yeah. So I'm having to hand hold this. Let me see if I can get it stable. There we go. Looks all right to me. Looks all right to me. So it's not a pin problem. We'll just try cleaning the pins on the original valve. Bit of Service-Sol and a toothbrush. You've seen it before. Let's get that back in there. All seems to be fine now. I can't explain it. And this is the problem with text charging time taken, is that, you know, I've now spent, you know, a large amount of time on this, and the noise is gone, but I can't give a reason why. And therefore, is it fair to charge for that? You know, it's a no parts required repair at the moment. But I can't confirm that it's fixed because maybe it just needs more time to heat up again. Maybe it was just the dirty pins or something like that. I don't know. And I don't like not being able to give absolute answers to things. V1 is microphonic. Suppose you can't see V1 from there, can you? That was a fun noise. That's an old Mullard. Let's clean those pins up too. Where'd the toothbrush go? Here it is. And then we'll put that one back in. Orientation is the same. In we go. Let that come back up. Interesting. But this one, where we had the noise earlier, isn't playing up at all. So I don't know now. I don't know. I'm going to have to leave it running for a bit longer, I think. So I'm going to go back to the customer, explain what I've done, what I've found, what I haven't found. And I need to put together a quote for him to do all of the filter caps on the board. Just the axials, 1, 2, 3, and 4 for the time being. And then we'll see where we are. Here's a cool one for you. This is a Selmer Little Giant. I believe it's the Mark III. which was 1963 to 1965, and this one is in incredibly nice condition. This thing looks absolutely fantastic. Look at that, brilliant. Big fan of that. And there's a cool story behind this amp, in that it was owned by a chap who gifted it to Bernie Marsden. And Bernie Marsden, you know, one of my long-standing fantastic customers, bless him, before he passed, had this amp in his collection for many years. And it's one of the only one of Bernie's amps that I didn't actually get to go through when I was working through his collection. After he passed, it was sold as part of the Bernie Marsden collection at auction, and I think it's the nephew of the original owner bought it, so it's now come back into the family, which is a great story. Apologise to Steve if I've got those details wrong about family connections and things, but yeah, so it was in a family, used in a band. Or Bernie played in a band with the original owner of this amp, and it then went to Bernie, and then, you know, after his death, the family has bought it back. So that's cool, isn't it? So it's a very simple amplifier, incredibly simple. 2 gain stages separated by volume and tone control, an EL84 output stage driving an output transformer, valve rectification EZ80, and that's it, really. That's it. Super simple, very champy. You know, an EL84 champ is very similar along those lines. But what's it in for? Well, the customer has asked me to give it a safety check, make sure it's all okay, make sure there's no issues with it, and service it as required. So go through, make sure that this thing can continue playing, continue making noise, doing all the good things. So you've got an on standby, sorry, not an on standby, an on off here, which is also the volume control, what I was trying to say. And then you've got a single tone control that rotates around. It's probably just a very simple low pass filter. So it's sending treble frequencies to ground. But that's about it. So let's get the back off. I think it's an 8-inch speaker in this. Some of them had 6-inch speakers, so we'll find out when I get this thing, open it up. And it's got a socket on the rear there that may have been added after the fact, and that might, the way it's been wired, it might disconnect the internal speaker when you connect to it. So we need to be wary of that. I need a flathead screwdriver. Every time I look for a flathead screwdriver, it's missing. Here it is. So plastic pot at the ready. We'll take these off and we'll have a look inside together. Now, I had an old Futurama Corvette, which was the later model of this, but that had tremolo. I had that many years ago. In fact, I think there's still a demo of it on the Rift YouTube channel that Ainsley did. Probably about 10 years ago now, 10, 11 years ago. I'll put a link to that down below. But they do this really cool thing when you drive them. They go really fuzzy. And it's a really cool sound as the tiny speaker struggles to keep up. Oh, my hands are in the way, aren't they? Come on. Serial number 14748. Oh, that's an old Cliff Jack, isn't it? Right then, so you don't see amps built like this anymore, do you? Output transformer, power transformer, that's your EZ80 rectifier valve, that's your EL84 output, that's your preamp valve. And it is a very, very early style PCB. You have to be super careful with these because it's incredibly easy to destroy these traces. So we'll have to be super careful with it. Make sure we don't cause any problems. So we've got, I think that's a Goodman's speaker, a Goodman's 8-inch speaker. Oh no, it's an ELAC. Excuse me, it's an ELAC. Made in England. 8RM201. Right, okay. So safety check, mains cable. Here's the mains cable. It's coming in up here. It looks like, let's see if we can get zoomed in and show you. There we go. We're switching both the live and the neutral. And look, we've got the old colour UK mains wiring there, black and red. And the safety earth is going up to its own dedicated lug here. So it is safe. It is wired okay. Just zoom out for a second. Condition of the plug. It's had a latest style plug put on it. Can't see any wires showing. That's in good condition. Fantastic. It's all good news. So let's have a look then. Quite dusty. Let me get some light on this so I can show you in more detail. Is that better? That looks better, doesn't it? Right, okay. So it's got a can capacitor behind this valve here. If I just pull the retainer off, gently remove the valve. Which is, that's a shame. Looks like a Mullard, but the print's come off. Could also be a Mazda. Let's look at the rectifier valve. Made in England, Brimar. So maybe the others are Brimar. And our preamp valve is a yellow print Mullard. Wow. The most sought after. That's worth a pretty penny now if it tests good. Wow. Okay, so there's our can capacitor. Cathode bias resistor behind it, this green thing there. So we need to check this capacitor. And hopefully there's an appropriate replacement available. But you see, there's not much going on. There's not much going on at all. We look at the schematic. No capacitor from the cathode on V1B. No one on V1A. In fact, that's tied directly to ground, so it's grid leaked, isn't it? The only other electrolytic is this 25 microfarad cathode bypass cap here. So we've got that to look at, and we've got the, oh, it's a 3232. Okay, I know they're available. Just 2 section. Yep, that's it. Not a lot of filtering. Okay, so all we need to do is check those. We need to check the bias on the output valve. In fact, that says 150 ohm. $150, but the schematic shows Do you see that's 150 or 130? How do you read that? Anyway, I'm sure I can find pictures online to see what the others have got. Look at that. Weimer coupling caps. Old style resistors. Very, very cool. And this cap here, that's the only other one I'm worried about. Interesting. So I think what we'll do is I'm going to put the valves back in. I'm happy to, I know the customer has used this recently, so I'm happy to fire it up and we'll do a quick bench test to see what sort of output we're getting. Right, so the amp is on and running, and you should be able to hear now, because I've put the other microphone in the cabinet, there is a hum. There is a hum, okay? And if I turn up the volume control, we get a different hum. If I turn the tone control, the hum does not change. So the hum is not in the audio circuit, or at least upstream of it anyway. Second thing I need to say is the socket on the back is not an external speaker socket. It is the input socket for the amplifier. I'm sorry that I got confused with that. Don't shoot me. Excuse me. Excuse me. So we've got quite a hum in the amplifier. Shall we measure it quickly? See what sort of frequency it is. Oh, that's a reflective screen, isn't it? If I turn the volume control up, where is it? That's volume down. You see the hum here. If I turn the volume control all the way up, you'll see it disappear. And back down again. So really interesting, but watch this. Just move that over to the side and try and get everything in shot. So this is a 200 Hertz hum, which is 4 times, double rectified. So we've got 50 Hertz to mains frequency here in the UK. So rectified is 100 Hertz. And 200 is a harmonic of that, and then you can see a 300 and a 400 on top. But watch this. If I just take my finger and I just press on the preamp valve, and we watch this harmonic here, the 400 Hertz, you'll see it drop. Interesting. Interesting indeed. So, that hum is quite intrusive, so it's going to need a recap. That's pretty obvious at this point. Which means pulling the chassis from the cabinet, trying to find something that's appropriate to fit in that capacitor, can capacitor position. I think I have an answer to that, but we'll see. And yeah, we'll go from there. But isn't that cool? Nice little amp. In order to do a power test, I'm going to have to disconnect the speaker. But as it's coming out anyway, I'm going to do that now, and then we'll hook it up to the oscilloscope and see what sort of output we're getting at the moment. All hooked up then, 4 ohm load, and here's our output sine wave. And if I just rotate the, see, that's minimum volume, and up it comes. We get to about that point, and that's when it starts to square off. There. Three volts into 4 ohms is 2.3 watts. Turn up the tone control and we start to see the effect of the tone control on the output stage. Now this is a single-ended amp, remember, so you very rarely get asymmetrical clipping. I think that tone control pot is quite dirty actually. But there you go. I don't think this amp is in the best health, but it's not terrible. I think it's just in need of some good TLC. 31 watts out the wall. Cool. Okay, so I've got a plan. And in the next couple of videos, you'll see the repair on this. Well, that's it then, guys. Thank you very much for watching once again. Don't forget, you've only got until Monday, 9 PM UK time, to get your order in for the 1-800 head. As always, please give this video a thumbs up. All your comments and questions down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Join the channel if you're feeling super generous, and I will catch you all at the next one.